Good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan Patrick with SN, and welcome to our beautiful May virtual user group meeting. We appreciate you all signing up and joining us. I'm going to quickly get through the agenda and updates, and then we'll swiftly turn things over to our presenter. So again, I'm Susan Patrick, Director of Client Solutions here at SN, and today, once again, we have Mike Williams, our Senior Solutions Advisor, doing the presentation. And as always, we got Kaylee in the background, keeping us both on the straight and narrow. Our one topic, and we just have one topic this time, which will be dashboards demystified. And I was afraid I was going to tongue twist over that word. We have some upcoming user group meetings. Our June meeting is on the 21st. I think I have that correct. Yes, June 21st. The topic is to be determined. So please make sure you fill out that survey that pops up when you exit the meeting. Helps give us feedback as to the topics that you guys are looking for. We have a July meeting coming up in Pittsburgh, and then we will have another one coming up in Central PA. Not sure the date yet on that, but that will be coming up also. I don't often do this, but this is an event that we had yesterday. And so this will be available on demand on our website. Just, talking to some folks about firm valuations and M&A and transitions and ownership transition and buy, sell. I think this was a great one for folks to maybe point their leadership to, partners, if you are in that stage where you might be looking at some kind of transition, even if it's, to an employee buyout type of thing, great opportunity to get back onto our website and check this out if you missed this yesterday. Then coming up next week, a week from today, we do have an event here presented by some of our tax experts, Tom and Jen and Karen. So about, some of these legislative tax reform tax items that may be expiring, coming up that, really kind of helps to plan out how they're impacting your business. So great thing there. I'm not so sure about that image though. That kind of creeped me out a little bit. And then on June 1st, we have another webinar coming up talking about overhead and FAR. So again, make sure that you're signing up for these and checking out what we have on our on-demand on our website, because all of these amazing webinars that our team pulls together, we do put out there on demand so that you can kind of get to them as your leisure. And then, of course, mark your calendars. Hopefully, a lot of you have already started thinking about Project Con. Not sure what happened there, but I'm going to go backwards. Maybe. There we go. It's coming up in October in Florida. So make sure that you start thinking about that and signing up for that. So I'm going to turn things over first. You all know I love my polling questions. It helps us get a sense of the audience and what's going on with folks. So I'm going to have Kaylee go ahead and pull up that first poll. And it's around upgrading to Vantagepoint. Again, I know that it's actually that snowball is really starting to roll down the hill with folks that are really looking towards the upgrade, taking the time to do the planning that's involved. So kind of helps us understand our audience as to where you're at or when you might be going. So as I see this kind of trending, looks like the majority of you are already on Vantagepoint. So Kaylee, you can go ahead and close that out and maybe show the results. So we got almost 70% already on Vantagepoint, which is really exciting. Another 17% of you by the end of the year. And then we got, those lingerers that are in 24 and those that are just going to hold on as long as they can. Next poll, please. And then here's a question. I know we don't have many of you that are still on Vision. Just kind of curious as to how you guys are utilizing dashboards, reports, BI. So it looks like those of you that are in Vantagepoint, a good bit of you guys are already using dashboards in Vantagepoint. That's fantastic. Hopefully you will get some tips and tricks today. We have a number of you that are using it in Vision, some combo. But Mike, this is an interesting one. 37% don't use dashboards, but really want to. So Kaylee, if you can just flip that up real quick so that Mike can see that, and the rest of the folks kind of see the results of that poll. So hopefully those of you that are in that last bucket walk away from today with maybe some pointers, tips and tricks, things that kind of get your ideas flowing. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Mike, and he's going to walk through dashboards today. I did forget to mention, make sure you put your questions in the questions panel. We do not monitor the chat and try to keep your questions to the topic. And if we don't get to your question today, we'll make sure that we get back to you personally. So welcome again, Mike, and thank you so much for taking the time to pull this together.
Absolutely. I want to make sure, number one, you can hear me. Number two, you can see my screen, dashboards demystified.
That's it. We got it.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to dive into dashboards in a decent amount of detail. If this is your first kind of, glance into dashboards, I highly recommend going out on standballnest.com and watch some of our on-demand webinars from years in the past. They are on, I'll say, legacy versions now of Vantagepoint. Sounds a little weird to say, but Barbara Bunting on our team does a great job of really setting the stage for dashboards. I'm only going to kind of build on that slightly from some of the ones that she's done in the past, but definitely go out there. There's, I think, 3 that are available. Go through, watch those when you can. And again, today, I'm just kind of building off of that foundation. So before I jump into Vantagepoint, I just want to state in the slide deck, I know the slide deck today was pretty small, but again, just kind of setting that groundwork just to make sure those in that 37% group have a baseline from what I'm talking about. So if you don't know what a dashboard is, I'm sure that you do, but if not, it's really a nice engaging way to present and visualize data. So, if you're not using it today, I'm guessing folks are kind of running multiple reports, kind of bouncing around from screen to screen. So a dashboard allows you to present a bunch of different material from one single source. And we really want them to tell a specific story. You can really load up a dashboard and kind of have that infinite scroll. You're just kind of consuming information. So we want to really kind of focus on the approach of, again, telling a story, have those dashboards be meaningful. You can really have as many dashboards as you need to convey a message. So don't kind of muddy things up. Tell a nice, concise story. And with that, dashparts, those are the individual little widgets that actually make up the dashboard itself. So they're pulling information from the hub records, from maybe a favorite report that you have, from activities. So dashboards consist of multiple dash parts. So really straightforward there. Oops, too far. So a couple things just to kind of keep in mind as we're having this conversation. If you're using multi-company, the company that you're currently on, the dashboards that you have, and ultimately the dash parts, are going to reflect whatever company you're in. So the data might be a little different. Just kind of keep that in mind as you're building these out. If you use multi-currency, that's another thing to really consider. You do have the display currency. So how are you actually presenting that on the dashboard? That is another piece that you need to configure when you're setting up your specific dash parts. Not something you have to worry about if you're not using multi-currency. A little 101. So there's a handful of dash part bases. And again, dash parts are what make up our dashboards as a whole. So each one of these provides different information. So get comfortable. Again, try and identify what message, what challenge, what are we really trying to communicate when we're consuming information on a dashboard, and that will help kind of establish what dash part you should be tables and charts. So in most of the dash parts, you're gonna have two options within there. Tables are pretty much what they are. If you're used to Excel, you have that Excel table look and feel. That's essentially what a table dash part type is. And then a chart, it's just a more graphical way to display that information. Instead of in rows and columns, you're using bar charts, putting things in columns. I like to use the spline for a couple things. This has that nice trending feel. So those are the two types of dash parts within most of those dash part bases. Now, something like a favorite report, the memo, system dash parts, you're not going to have those various options. So those are really specific. These dash parts, tables, and charts are really specific for the dash part bases that are pulling from our hubs. And Deltek does do a pretty nice job of including some predefined dashboards. So just to kind of get familiar, same thing with dash parts, I've included the link here at the bottom. This way you can have a good understanding of what's already out there in your Vantagepoint database. And what we like to really suggest is that when it comes to really anything in your system that you're testing or that you're just kind of trying to better understand, do that in a sandbox environment. It allows you to play around. You don't have to worry if you accidentally delete something or if something's not quite working out and you're not sure why. Instead of it potentially impacting what other users within your organization might see, do it in the sandbox, take one less burden off yourself, and you can always refresh that sandbox should you really get into a predicament. The other nice thing with dash parts, specifically within Vantagepoint, is you have the ability to import and export them. So it might not be a bad idea, just kind of as best practice, take those predefined dash parts, go ahead and export them out to a network folder, memorialize them, maybe kind of put the date that you're keeping track of when those new Deltek predefined dash parts are coming out. So that way, should you ever modify those, you have a way to kind of bring them back. Same thing as you're building things within that sandbox environment. Let's say you've designed the perfect dashboard or dash part for your organization. You don't have to rebuild that again in your live production environment. All you have to do is export it out, and then you can import it into your production database. So definitely suggest viewing those two links there at the bottom. System dash parts, these are pretty unique. So Deltek really kind of restrains what you can do. So, you know, if you pull up something like the milestone system dash part, for example, you can't really edit, you can't modify it. There's a couple other system dash parts. Again, go to that link at the bottom, do a deep dive, see what's out there. They provide pretty good descriptions of what each of those system dash parts do. But keep in mind, if you're trying to make it fit your screen and you're wondering why you can't drag it over, or if you're trying to edit it, those are uneditable, and most of them you don't have the ability to resize. So they're kind of fixed in place, which is really unique to those system-specific dash parts. Everything else, you pretty much have free reign. You can move it around, resize it, edit it as needed. All right, so getting into some of the options behind dashboards, and I'm going to cover this in some pretty good detail live in Vantagepoint, but I just wanted to point this out. If you click that options button when you're in edit mode and then go over to share, that's going to allow you to share dashboards with specific roles or employees, but keep in mind role security really comes into play. So just because you share a specific dashboard with someone does not mean they'll actually be able to access that. And again, we're going to take a look at what that really means live in the system. Dashboard options. That's another one. I'm just going to kind of advance the slide. I'm not going to read through all that text. We can use this graphic, and I'm going to walk through here too. But this screen really allows you to share again. So you see that share button on the far right side. There's actually two ways to share those. But you can move the specific dashboards around. That's going to change their display order. We're going to talk about filtering, what the required filter checkbox does. So let's just kind of jump into it. I think that's all I have. Yep, that was it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring over Vantagepoint. So I'm signed in as an admin. I pretty much have free reign. So I have a bunch of stuff over here in my navigation panel. We're only going to focus on one or two dashboards today, time permitting. And I want to start off by showing some like a specific dashboard that maybe not a lot of folks use. Definitely the ones in that 37% group are likely not using these at all. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to close this main menu. Oops. Close the main menu. Let's try that again. All right, the menu can stay open. Doesn't matter. We're going to move on. So what I have here is this select a dashboard filter to define criteria to display the dashboard. That is coming from this area over here in options. So we have all of the dashboards available. We have our filter and required filter. So what filter does, and this is the specific dashboard that we were just looking at. In my example, I want to use this to tell a very specific story. So a lot of the time we have dashboards that focus on project-specific metrics. But I often hear feedback, oh, it'd be great if I could understand some information from a client standpoint. So we have one client, we do a lot of work with them. It would be great to have, a dashboard that's really specific to them. And that's kind of the intent with this example. So what we're able to do is use this filter, and we are filtering it by project. You have a drop-down account, so your GL account, employee records, and projects. Those are the three that we're able to filter off of within the various dash parts. Or excuse me, within the dashboard as a whole, and it kind of flows down to the various dash parts. And then this required filter is essentially enforcing that dashboard level search. So when I go back to this client review, you're going to see that message, and that's coming up because we have this required filter in place. If I did not have this required filter, each dash part would show whatever the inherent search criteria for that specific dash part is. So if you have a dash part that's project centric, maybe your go-to is show me all active projects. Or maybe you have specific save searches that might be by division or project manager is me. So when this box is unchecked, those specific dash part search criterias are going to be in play, and they're really going to generate what you see. And then you can override that. Well, not override it, but using the overall dashboard filter allows you to have additional flexibility. So while I'm in here, I also want to point out that we have a associated dashboard. So again, these are the individual items making up our dashboard as a whole. The display order, it's pretty straightforward. That's outlining where does the specific dashboard kind of fall in order within our navigation menu. And then of course, we can share the dashboard with specific folks. And we're going to come back to this screen. So let's just jump back in. Not going to make any changes. And just to show you what's possible here, I'm going to search one specific project. All right, so we've got one project. We can see some AR information. We've got some client billed and received. And then we have some project-specific metrics. So we're going to go back to our search criteria. And I have a saved search. And again, this is specific to displaying all of the items, all of the projects, potentially opportunities as well for one specific, here it's the primary client. That's what we have selected. So I'll just go ahead and select all. And now you can see that's updating. So it's pulling in any active projects. And I'm going to get into the edit options here shortly, but just want to kind of cover what we're looking at. at a high level from the dashboard standpoint. So some AR information, like I said before, you can see built in, received. Down here, we're looking at budget versus actual, and these are just high level examples. You can really tailor this to meet your specific needs. And this is not a Deltek provided dashboard. This is one that I developed for some of our sales demos, interacting with our client base to really help kind of display information. If we go down, we also have one that's specific to pipeline. So this firm, we only have one opportunity hanging out there. Now you might be asking yourself, oh, this is great, but this is only showing me one firm. So do I have to list all my specific client records and create saved searches for each of them? Well, you absolutely could. Again, maybe you have other saved searches. You're looking things by discipline, division, maybe principal, project manager. All of those would still work with what we're showing here. But I had this one, again, really designed with a specific firm in mind. So you have a default firm, which I do here. And then as you're kind of in your Monday morning meetings or whenever you're looking to really review firm record details, you can just come in and say, okay, well, what primary client do we really want to focus on? I can type in Anderson. I'm going to hit apply. What I'm not going to do is go into my save options and hit save, because that's going to override that save search. Before it was A24. You might not have a specific preference, maybe you do, but hitting apply does not impact the default or whatever your standard save search criteria is for this favorited search. So I'll go ahead and hit apply. And now again, we can see those projects update. We can see what the billed and received information is for that specific client. And again, all of the various projects below. So you can have kind of one-off searches. We can search for specific projects, or again, we can use this save search to identify specific clients. All right, so I want to go back in the options, because what I want to do next is show how we can share dashboards and the reason why we need to be mindful of role security. So I'm going to drag over another Vantagepoint instance. If I go to my main menu area, I have one personal dashboard. It doesn't have any data yet. We'll get there, but nothing under my dashboards. So if I go into role security, or actually first, let's go ahead and go into options. And I want to share a dashboard with that individual, or really with that role. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my projects. This is the one I want to share. I'll hit the share button. I'm going to share it with a specific role. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to drag this back, hit refresh. And now you can see my projects is available, but we're not done there. So if I go into my projects, all right, we have some information that's populating. And I guess as I was prepping for this, maybe I didn't hit save in role security. So let me just show you what that looks like regardless. All right, we're in role security for that specific role I just shared that dashboard with. Down here under save rights, we have dashboards and dashparts. So this is where you can say, do I want this role to be able to save personal dashboards? If they're a principal, if they're a PM, maybe you want them to save dashboards and dashparts for all roles. Maybe if they're a time and expense user only, maybe they don't need access to dashboards at all. So this is one setting that we need to kind of be mindful of. The other one is under access rights. I want to focus here on dashpart bases, or excuse me, dashparts. All right. So these are all of the various dashparts that this user role has access to. So notice my project watch list, all of these that are on here, make up my projects. So if I would remove any of these off here, so let's go ahead and remove the budget versus actual. Hit apply. I'm going to go ahead and drag this back. I'm going to refresh it. And now you can see I have this message right here, letting whoever's in this role know that they don't have access to this specific dash part. So if you're an admin, you're a power user, you have the ability to share dashboards with specific individuals, specific roles. You really need to be mindful that that's just one step. The second step is coming in here to security roles, access rights, and then sharing the specific dash parts that make up that dashboard you're trying to push out to that specific role or group of roles. So some people are getting kind of caught up in that. This is a big piece. You really have to know those specific dash parts that are making up your dashboards. So if I go back to this, I type in project. And then one that we want, I think I have it spelled out fully. Yep, project budget versus actual. I'll go ahead and apply, hit save. If I come back, now I have access to it. So again, keep that in mind as you're building things out, sharing them within your organization. You really be mindful of what that access rights area looks like. The other thing that I want to talk about are personal dashboards. So a personal dashboard, if that box is selected that I was showing before, the employee has the ability to essentially, I'll say, design their own dashboard. However, they have no control over the dash parts. So whatever has been shared with them from this area of access rates, that's all they have access to. So if an employee wants, they can, quote unquote, design their own dashboard, but all they're effectively doing is modifying the layout of the dashboard itself. So I just wanted to point that out. So folks keep that in mind. And let me just show this too. If we click here, if you were an admin, you had the ability to modify dash parts, there would be an edit button here. But again, since this role does not have the ability to do that, all they can do is create, quote unquote, personal dashboards made up of the dash parts that are already shared with them. They cannot edit, they cannot modify those specific dash parts. So it's just really a way for them to kind of categorize things, lay out a dashboard in a way that makes the most sense for them. They're not impacting anyone else within the organization. All right, so that was a little clunky, but we'll go back into the dashboards. Again, I want to go into the edit mode. I'm going to select from the drop down again, just so we can see it populated with data. And what I want to do now is kind of do a deep dive into this client AR. And this is one, again, that we've developed. You can use the predefined dash parts kind of as a starting point, modify them if you need to. So I'm going to go here into edit. And these are all of the columns that I have selected for this specific dash part. So if we look at the top, we can see the specific dash part base that we're using. So this one is the AR detail. How do we want to present that information on the dashboard? I'm selecting a table. Alternatively, you can select chart. You can modify this. So if I hit chart now, you can see that some changes have taken place. So it hid some columns. This is specific to how it's going to display information on a chart. We're not really able to graph the project name, the invoice number. Those aren't things that really have data for us to display on a graph. those would really be items that would display either in the legend or in one of the axes, not actually in the chart itself. So that's why those columns are coming in hidden when I selected chart versus table. The values that we would actually see should we have a chart selected would be kind of the transactional items, the real data. What's our invoice total, amount, paid amount, all of those great things. So I do not want to save those changes. So I'm just going to jump back. We're going to go ahead and we're going to edit that again. The next area that I want to focus on is our search criteria. And again, this is unique for this specific dash part. Right now, I'm just selecting all active projects. And it's helpful if you are using dash parts in a dashboard that have project filtering selected. Take advantage of how you're labeling the dash part title as well as the subtitle. The more information you can give your organization or folks using these dash parts, the better they'll be equipped to really understand what they're looking at. So mine's pretty straightforward. The main piece of information that I have on here is active projects. So before, when we were looking at the filter options, we were grabbing all projects. So maybe we have revenue calculations and we want to understand from a firm, from a client standpoint, how has that client performed as a whole? When it comes to client AR, well, maybe we just want to look at active projects only. So use that subtitle, take advantage of that. Once we get into the actual columns, I'm a huge proponent of folks getting comfortable with the Vantagepoint help menu. I know it might be a little unorthodox. Nobody really likes to read manuals, things like that. But I'm going to show it to you while I have your attention. There's a lot of great information. So I like to have it bookmarked. If you're continuously kind of building out, refining, enhancing how you're presenting information to folks, this is a nice place just to make sure that you have a good handle on what's happening within the various dash part bases. So we can see all of the bases here. If I go to AR details, now I can see descriptions for each of the columns that are available within the AR detail base. And this holds true for all of the bases that we have available. So I know the help isn't necessarily a cool area, but I really want to point this out. There's a lot of valuable information here. All right. Calculated fields are a way for us to essentially expand on what's available within the dash part base itself. So as we start to add columns, we can clearly see the ones that are calculated fields. And since we're talking AR, let's go ahead and actually create a calculated field together. So I have a few in here. What I want to do is show you how you can create a calculated field to understand AR that's maybe over 120 days. So I'm going to do a new calculation. We're going to call this AR. Let's do user group meeting, AR greater than 120 days. So that's our description. The data type, you only have two available, numeric and percentage. So if you are hoping to display some kind of text, for example, if AR is over 120 days, maybe say yes. If not, say no. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So what I'm going to do down here in this use calculation area is we're going to do a small amount of SQL. So nothing scary, but I just wanted to show how you can use calculated fields to display information. So we're going to do case when, and this is essentially an if statement. So I want to say when days outstanding. So I'll just search for day. I'm going to add that. Is greater than 120 days. Then show me something. What do I want to see? I want to see the amount due. I'm going to add that field. And then again, we're in an if statement, else 0. And then we do need to add this little end. So this is really straightforward. We're saying when days outstanding are over 120, show me the amount that that client owes. If it's not over 120, we don't need to display anything. I'll go ahead and hit save. Now, keep in mind, it does not automatically add it. So we do have to take that extra step. And now we have a calculated field that displays the amount due when AR is over 120 days. All right, so I'm gonna not hit save just yet. I wanna walk through some of these other areas. The table options, pretty straightforward. Notice that this checkbox is unchecked. So what this is essentially doing is always rebuild. Every time you're kind of accessing that specific dash part, it's going to go out and it's going to grab the most recent information and it's going to update whatever that dash part has. You can also schedule it to update. So if it's something that maybe you have a lot of records, it could potentially kind of bog your system down a little bit. If you're doing that refresh every time you're opening up that specific dash part, maybe you're including all active projects and you have 500 active projects or more, that might slow things down a little bit. So in that scenario, maybe you don't want that always rebuild dash part, and the schedule dash part would make a little more sense. You can also add notes. So these are not going to display on the dashboard. This is just kind of an FYI for whoever's kind of using it. You can really kind of communicate the intent of the specific dash part. Conditional row formatting applies to the dash part as a whole. So for example, if we stay on this theme of AR greater than 120 days, I could make it so that any row that's being presented in this specific dash part, if it has AR greater than that 120, it can turn a specific color. We can also do that by the specific calculated field or standard field itself. We don't have to do that for the entire table, but you absolutely can. Sorting, pretty straightforward. That allows you to kind of sort and display the information you have within your table. And then presentation currency, luckily we don't have to worry about that in this demo environment. But if you do, you would need to select the specific presentation currency and then select your exchange rate as well. All right, so I just want to quickly work through some of these columns. Column name is pretty straightforward. However, you'll notice I added this Vantagepoint user group meeting in front. Maybe we don't need that. So if you go to properties, you can change the display heading. So maybe I just want that to say AR over 120 days. Since I'm already here in properties, we can walk through these. Decimals, straightforward. The grand totals, subtotals, zero amounts. Those checkboxes are going to display, do you want things grand totaled? So if we are in a table format like this, and we have grouping, which we do, that's going to allow you to show that grand total at the very top of the table itself. Display zero amounts, straightforward as well. If it's zero, have it display zero. If not, don't display anything. And this conditional formatting here, this is by cell. So this is different than the row itself. So if we had conditional formatting apply to this column, it would just display in the cells within that column, not across the entire row of the table. All right, filters, again, pretty self-explanatory. We can use a filter if there's a specific amount due. Maybe you only want to see items that are over a certain threshold. So if that threshold is 50,000, this is going to filter out anything that has an amount due that's under 50,000. So it's only going to show us those ones for 50,000, or actually the ones greater than 50,000. So So we do greater than or equal to if we wanted 50,000 on up. Group columns, we're grouping here by project and then invoice number. Calculated fields, we already saw that. If I needed to modify that calculation, I could go in here and do so. It's also a nice visual because we can change the column names. Having this little pencil icon really helps identify which of those columns are actually calculated fields. Date ranges, this could be extremely helpful. So you can apply specific date ranges. I'm not going to do a deep dive here on this, but there's a lot that you can modify. So if we wanted to do a fiscal period, this is a nice way to kind of build out trending reports. So in this scenario, if you follow my mouse up in the upper right-hand corner, we can see the period that I'm in. So if I left it at -1, every time this dashpart displays new information, it's always going to grab that last fiscal period amount. So that's really nice. You can create a lot of cool trending dashparts using this ability to have a -1, and that way you don't always have to come in and modify what that looks like. Properties we already showed. Drill to, this would allow us to click on a specific column and then have a new dashpart essentially pop up. So I don't have any here. If you attended the user group meeting that we did last month, we did walk through a couple examples of some new predefined dashparts that Deltek has delivered to us. Within there, there's a couple of examples of drill tos. So if this is new, you're not understanding what drill to is, really recommend going back, watch that user group meeting from last month. And hiding columns. Hiding columns is interesting. So you can have specific items within your table. Maybe you're filtering by something and you're using that to really display information, but the item you're filtering off of might not really be relevant. So if we think of things that are unbilled, we could have unbilled as a column, we could hide it, and we could use a filter that says, don't show things that are fully billed or paid in full, as an example. So that way you can use some things kind of behind the scenes. You can hide columns, leverage filtering to, again, display things within your dashpart. Copy, this really allows us to copy the specific column that we have selected. So now you would have two invoice total amounts. We don't need to do that in this scenario. Let's go ahead and hit save. And what we want to focus on is this new calculated field that we added. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, jump to client, grab the specific one we want. If I scroll over, oops, highlighted everything. If I scroll over to the right, now we can see each project that has AR over 120 days. So you could create multiple groups. Maybe if you wanted to identify projects that were less than 120 days or less than 60 days, kind of in between that range, whatever metrics are most meaningful to you, you can really leverage those calculated fields to display that information. All right, and I did notice, let's just jump back in here. All right, I talked about the heading. I guess I didn't actually hit apply. So I will do that this time. So I'm gonna hit apply just so you can see how you can change the column name from the actual column itself. So again, the heading, this is what's going to display. This is the actual column name within the system. So let's just hit save again. I'm going to go to options. Oops. Oh, jumping around too quick. Sorry. I want to go to my search criteria, client. Again, select all. There we go. Now we have that slimmed down version of that heading. So I hope you can start to think a couple different ways that you can really leverage, again, calculated fields. I do want to talk through this example I have here. So you're probably wondering, well, what's going on with this column? There really isn't really a heading. What I'm doing is using conditional formatting to take a look at the AR comment column. When you have a grouping on, certain data sets do not kind of roll to that highest grouping amount. So if I expand this, so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about, AR comments go down to the invoice level. They don't roll up to the project level. So if I had an AR comment and I had a huge string of projects, maybe a bunch of them were over 120 days, and I wanted to get a good understanding of, well, what's happening? Are we trying to collect? Is there a higher level issue, something that really needs our attention? Where we want to understand, is there an AR comment hanging out there? What this column is essentially doing is, if there's an AR comment, turn it blue. Really straightforward. And again, we're doing that because we cannot see that level of detail at the project level. It's down at the invoice level. And since we're using grouping, that grouping is collapsed. We don't have the ability to see that. So I just want to walk through that example real quick. It's a little outside of the box. We are using a small amount of SQL again, so hopefully I'm not scaring anyone off. But notice right here, AR comment checker, this is hidden. So you're not seeing that. If I get into the calculated field using another fun if statement, essentially if AR comment is not blank, then 1. If it is blank, 0, we're not interested, we don't need to know about it. So again, what that's doing is it's looking at the invoice line, it's populating a 1, but it has the ability to roll up to the project level. So then we can use another column. This is a blank one. If I go into properties, we have this called AR comment. And what we have in here, oh, excuse me, this is the one I want. So notice the column heading is blank. We have something called a column separator. This is a user-defined field. Again, this is another great tip that Barbara had. So the user-defined field is sitting on the projects hub. Essentially, it's there to help separate columns in reporting. So what it looks like if we went to the actual project hub is a user-defined field that looks like that. So we're kind of repurposing that for a dash part, and we're using this conditional formatting area. So the type is static value. There's 2 static value. Essentially, you're comparing a column to a value. Column compare, you're comparing a column to another column. So in this scenario, we're adding a background color. We're grabbing the AR comment checker, the one that we have that little SQL if statement in, and we're saying if comment checker is greater than 0, turn it blue. So it's really straightforward. It's a little outside of the box, but it gives us additional flexibility within a Vantagepoint dash part to present information that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see unless you drilled into that specific item. So I hope that one wasn't too hard to follow. Again, keep in mind, we have this column hidden. We don't need to actually display the 1s and 0s. All we're doing is using this column right here. It has that little piece of conditional formatting. It's looking for a 1. If this column has a 1, even though it's hidden, it's still there. And that's really driving that dash part as a whole. So again, just so everyone can see it, my Bleecker Street, it's blue at the project level because there is an AR comment. So that SQL if statement, if it's null, if it's 0, let it be 0. In this scenario, there's something in here, there is an AR comment. That's why that's blue. So might not be something that you all are going to use, but I just wanted to kind of point that out as a cool little workaround. One other thing to keep in mind, if you're using this filtering option on your dashboards and you try and refresh, it will not save or it will not recognize what's happening here within this filter. So let me show you what that looks like. So if I hit refresh, it's going to override that save search criteria, and it's going to look back and say, what's the search criteria within this dash part, which is all active projects. So now all active projects are displaying. So whenever you're building a dashboard that's using this filtering, depending on how many records could potentially be in there, this is a pretty good use case to go into your table options and either do always rebuild or schedule that specific dash part to be rebuilt at a specific time. So that way you don't have to worry about someone going in, manually refreshing, seeing all active projects and getting confused. So I'll just go ahead and check that. That's going to remove that refresh icon from the dash part. I'll go ahead and pull up that save search criteria. So now that's no longer there. All right, I know that was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful. Susan, I'm sure there's a slew of questions out there.
Yeah, great job, Mike. I've been trying to field the questions as they've been coming in. One thing, if you could please, I think someone asked to see the actual AR dashboard, just so they have on it. I think it's the AR dashboard is what they were looking for.
This one right here?
Yeah, I think that's what they want to just kind of see, again, kind of get an idea of what you had on there. Perfect. And then the other thing, and maybe this isn't a good one to show it, well, for one of the items. So if you can show how to export, or where you select to export the dashboard.
Absolutely. Yep, so right here, you have to be in edit mode. It's not going to display if you're not in edit mode. Let's go into import export. I'll go ahead and export. And now this is going to give me all of the dash parts within our system. You just select the ones you want. I think you can select multiples. Yep, you can. So I'll just hit export. Save. It's going to open up in your downloads file. And at that point, all you have to do, let's say you're designing that in your sandbox, you're ready to bring it over into your production, hit browse, and then you can kind of bring those in. And this is what they look like. They're that .dpt. So all you would do is grab it, hit open, import. I already have this in here, so I'm not going to do that. But at that point, it would come into your dash part library.
Awesome. And then the other one, and this is a good one to do this on, how to actually export the information within that one dashboard. So maybe like that top one, the AR review one, where you have the ability.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yep, so you can export it to a CSV file. That'll come over. and it does a pretty good job of spacing things out. Just note that it's not going to provide you that additional level of detail. So if you can kind of see, if you're looking to understand, or maybe it's a project and it has multiple invoices or multiple levels of detail, you are not going to see that in the export unless you have that fully expanded. So let me just show real quick. So here we have collapsed. It would need to be expanded if you're looking to grab all of that data in Excel.
All right, awesome. And then there was a question on your fancy dancy AR comment checker. Folks were loving that little trick. There were two questions around that. First of all, does it have to be a user-defined field in the hub, or can it just be added somehow in the dash part?
Okay, so two things there. This AR comment checker, this is a calculated field. This is where that if statement's coming into play. This one right here, this kind of blank area, if I go into properties, this column separator, this is essentially just a user-defined field that does need to exist somewhere within the project's hub. So we're essentially kind of using this, and it doesn't have to have any real significance behind it. The reason that we're using this is to have kind of a blank canvas, so to speak. We don't want something that could potentially have a dollar amount or a name or something like that that would kind of clutter up what we're trying to display. So that's why this field works pretty well for this scenario. So it would need to be a user-defined within the project's hub.
Awesome. All right, let me see. We have a few minutes left. We're staying on the AR dashboard. Good place to stay. If you can kind of talk through the significance of the red and green.
Oh yeah, back on the AR dashboard.
The AR one, yep.
Oh.
There you go.
All right. Okay, so the significance with the red and green, very similar. So using that column in a similar way, this is to identify the groupings right here. So again, AR less than 60, have it turn green. 60 to 120, I think I have one in here. I did. Yep, have it turn yellow. And then anything over 120, have it turn red. And use case wise, maybe that's not mission critical to you. I just thought it was a nice little thing, so I added it, kind of playing around. You could just as easily have the columns themselves. But awesome. that same methodology using that SQL if statement.
Perfect. And then the invoice counter. Some questions on that.
Yeah, so the invoice counter, this one is slightly flawed. So I want to kind of throw that out there. The intent here is to give you a total number of invoices. However, if you have a project that has an invoice with transactions on multiple phases, it's not going to function as expected. So again, keep in mind some of the things that I'm doing are kind of for demo purposes, just to talk about what might be possible. I think if I scroll down the Bleecker Street Bridge, if we looked at this, it says 2, so you would think, oh, there's 2 invoices out there. In actuality, there's 1 invoice, and if you go down into the details, we're actually hitting 2 phases. So in that scenario, that counter doesn't quite work. So that was kind of we're proofing something out, but I think there could still be a workaround there. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Perfect. All right, well, this certainly was a meeting jam-packed full of great information, Mike. I just, I love dashboards. I know you do too. There's just so much that's possible. We could probably do dashboards every single month in our user group meetings and still just scratch the surface of the art of possible. So I appreciate your time today. I know there were a few questions possibly left in the questions panel. I think some of them were answered live as Mike was going through this. So we'll kind of review that and make sure anyone we didn't get back to you, we will certainly make sure that we email you with the response. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Make sure you answer that survey. I say it every time, but it is true. I read through it every month. Looking for your feedback on how we're doing, as well as comments on what you'd like to see. So I appreciate that. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in June. Thank you, everyone.